Now, Republican governors are mulling legal action over President Biden's new vaccine mandate. That's going to affect nearly 80 million American workers. Edward Lawrence is at the White House with the latest developments there. Hi, Edward.
Hey, Jackie. And you know what? Businesses, small to medium-sized businesses, are starting to grumble here. For example, the owner or co-owner of a Michigan manufacturing plant says that he's for vaccines, but he's against mandates. And the reason being, it's going to cost his business money in testing, also the administration to try and track the employee status that he has of who's vaccinated and who's not. So as these lawsuits are starting to come together, I talked with a lawyer who handles OSHA cases. They said the administration has a little bit of an issue because the OSHA rule needs to show that it is a grave danger as well as an emergency rule is necessary. And she says the administration may have undermined that.
Thank you so much. Here now, attorney Seth Behrenswig. Great to see you, Seth. Your reaction to Edward's report, what the administration is trying to do here. You've got on one side, is this against the Constitution? On the other side, you've got the OSHA standard. It's hard to make sense of this. And it sort of seems like, you can push this idea that it's a grave danger or that, it's an emergency situation. On the other hand, you could say we're 18 months into this pandemic. There is a vaccine out there. Things are not as bad as everybody is making it seem.
Sure, and as you've noted, and as your reporter has done a great job, we can see the collision course coming between the White House directive and these claims of unconstitutional overreach. And I think the issue has been teed up in a precisely correct manner. The question is whether it is unconstitutional for the White House to direct its Occupational Safety and Health Administration to issue emergency regs compelling employers with 100 and more employees to require vaccination or weekly testing or face significant fines. What we will see next is we will see these trials in action. There will be lawsuits coming in a couple of weeks, and these folks will be filing what are called motions for injunctions. The problem is this: in order to win a motion for an injunction, the movement has to demonstrate what's called a likelihood of success on the merits. That's going to be tough. In the end, I think courts will more likely than not deem this to be constitutional because there's a lot of deference that's applied to agency standards. They're the ones that are in charge of interpreting what is an emergency and what is an appropriate course, and there's an alternative for testing as well. So listen, it's going to be a very thick battle, and this is going to be going on for quite a while before the answer is in.
It's going to be a hot debate for sure, especially where we are in this pandemic. But, I think back to just being able to come back to work in some cases, or being able to get the vaccine early on, to show that you had a pre-existing medical condition. At the Javits Center, they were saying people could come and get the shot if they had that condition, but they weren't verifying it. And what I found out later was that essentially it was a HIPAA violation. They couldn't ask you to show documentation of what your pre-existing condition was. So anybody who wanted to at that time essentially could get the shot. And so I know it's not exactly the same thing here, but you ask yourself, do we have to disclose this information to employers? Do we have to subject ourselves? Are our rights being violated? People may have many reasons that they don't want to get the vaccine. Number one, they could have had COVID. And so they could have the antibodies, which are far more effective than any vaccine. And then there are medical reasons, religious reasons, and all the rest. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that you're highlighting one of the major components of this story that hasn't been extensively covered before, which is it's one thing to say that a law is effective in terms of it being legal, but it's another entirely to say whether it works. We're not going to be able to browbeat vaccine-hesitant employees into getting vaccinated. The president's bedside manner on this really leaves much to be desired, and the companies are going to be walking a tightrope here. On the one hand, they need to have the vaccine-hesitant get vaccinated and ask them to please do it, but on the other hand, they're facing fines. So you're exactly right. There's a lot of ambiguity. This is very difficult. There are 80 million people on the line, and the White House has now thrust this obligation onto corporate America. So there's going to be a lot of a tightrope that's going to be walked here, and it's going to be extremely difficult. I think the White House would be doing a much better service to corporate America if they had a little bit of a softer bedside manner, because right now, if you're going to threaten people, it's just not going to work.
Well, they're not really worried about the bedside manner. In an earlier segment, we were talking about how they're trying to raise taxes on corporations. They certainly don't care about that. But I'm thinking about, how this plays out. While it's playing out in court, then you're going to see people saying that they don't necessarily want to go back to work if their colleagues are not vaccinated, or that they refuse to go back to work because they don't want to get vaccinated. When the White House essentially starts this kind of dialogue and this conversation, they're making it harder to get back to business.
Well, and they're making it harder for the companies, too, because think of the labor shortage. The economy is strong, but there is a significant labor shortage in America right now, and corporate America is going to be having a very difficult time. They're going to be telling key personnel that they're going to have to lose their job, or the company is going to be driven home with a penalty. And at the end of the day, there are people that might end up going to other employers that have less than 100 employees. So it's very, very difficult, and that's why I think it's really going to be a tightrope. There's going to be a lot of obligations on the shoulders of CEOs and on HR directors to make sure that there's a way to make this work. It's a tight labor market. People are concerned. It's got to be done correctly, or it's just not going to get done.
You're right on that. But what I see coming is chaos as a result of it, especially in the interim until final decisions are made. And there are some folks out there using any excuse to stay home and not have to go back to work. And then we start all these other problems, of helping people who are not currently employed. I mean, it's kind of like Pandora's box. But Seth, we appreciate your insight and your analysis. Thank you.
My pleasure.